Springfield has a state. The show will not tell you which one. Ned Flanders once said the 4 states bordering it are Ohio, Nevada, Maine, and Kentucky. 4 states that cannot all touch the same place because 2 of them are on opposite sides of the country. That sentence is in the official Simpsons movie. The writers knew, the writers did it on purpose. And that single impossible sentence is one of the smaller plot holes the show has produced in 36 years on the air. The Simpsons has been every age. The Simpsons has lived in every decade. The Simpsons has died and come back. The Simpsons has been banned from almost every state in America and keeps visiting them anyway. The longest running show in American television history has, over time, quietly stopped making sense, and the audience has quietly stopped caring. Welcome to Yellowfan. Let's get started. The floating timeline and the 2 versions of Homer and Marge. To understand the biggest plot hole in the entire run of The Simpsons, start with a simple question. When did Homer and Marge meet? The show has answered this question more than once. The answers do not match. They have never matched. And the gap between them has grown so wide over 36 seasons that the show has stopped trying to close it. The first answer came in season 2, in an episode called The Way We Was, which aired in January 1991. The setup is gentle and warm. The Simpsons television breaks down. Marge tells the kids the story of how she and Homer met. The flashback drops the audience into 1974. Homer and Marge are 17. Marge has been sent to detention for attending a feminist rally. Homer and Barney are in detention for smoking in the boys' bathroom. The classroom they sit in has a Nixon-era poster on the wall. The hairstyles are 1974 hairstyles. The cars are 1974 cars. The music cues are 1974 music cues. Everything about the episode places Homer and Marge in high school during the year 1974. This was not a small detail. The Way We Was one of the early classics of the show. It built the foundation of who Homer and Marge were as people. Homer pretends to be a French student so he can be tutored by Marge and spend time with her. Marge finds out he is lying and goes to prom with someone else. Homer walks home alone in the rain. Marge picks him up. They fall in love. The whole episode rests on the year being 1974, because that is what makes Homer's slow-rolling teenage heartbreak feel real. He is a young man in a specific year, in a specific America, going through a specific kind of pain. The follow-up episodes only made this stronger. I Married Marge, which aired in December 1991, picked up the story. Marge gets pregnant in 1980. Homer is working at a mini-golf course. He proposes. They get married in a small wedding chapel just over the state line. Marge is already showing. Bart is born later that year. The episode includes a scene where Homer hears Bart cry for the first time and falls in love with him in real time. It is one of the most loved scenes in the show's history. Lisa's First Word, which aired in December 1992, kept building. The flashback is set between 1981 and 1984. Homer and Marge live in a small apartment on the Lower East Side with baby Bart. They move into 742 Evergreen Terrace after Marge announces she is pregnant with Lisa. The episode is full of small period details. The Olympics are on the television. The clothing matches the time. The soundtrack matches the time. Lisa is born in 1984. Bart is 4. For the entire first decade of the show, the timeline held. Homer and Marge were teenagers in 1974. They got married in 1980. Bart was born that year. Lisa was born in 1984. Maggie came along around 1989, the same year the show first went on the air. The math worked. The audience could trust it. Then came season 19. In January 2008, the show aired an episode called That 90s Show. The premise is small at first. Bart and Lisa are looking through old boxes in the attic. They find a college diploma. The diploma belongs to Marge from Springfield University. This is already strange because Marge has never been described as a college graduate before. Lisa, being Lisa, does the math. Bart is 10. Homer and Marge are in their mid-30s. If Marge went to college, then Bart was born much later than they have been saying. Marge and Homer then tell the kids the real story of one of the darkest points of their relationship. ship. The flashback drops the audience into the early 1990s. Homer and Marge are a young couple, dating, living together in a small apartment. They graduated from high school recently. Marge gets accepted into Springfield University. Homer takes a job at his father's laser tag warehouse to pay for it. Marge meets a college professor who flirts with her. She and Homer break up. Homer becomes the lead singer of a grunge band called Sadgasm. Sadgasm sings a song that Kurt Cobain hears over the phone, which inspires Nirvana. Homer becomes briefly famous. Weird Al parodies his music. Homer becomes addicted to what he thinks are drugs. They turn out to be insulin for diabetes from drinking too many frappuccinos. Marge realizes she still loves him. They reunite. They have a child. The flashback ends. That child is Bart. This is a problem. Because the show has now told the audience two completely different stories about how Homer and Marge got together. In one, they fall in love in 1974, marry in 1980, and have a baby that year. In the other, they live together as a young couple in the early 1990s, break up, get back together, and have Bart over a decade later than the first version said. Both stories are presented as canon. Both stories are presented as memory. Both are presented as the truth of who these people are. There is no way for both to be true. None. The fans noticed. The show's own writers noticed. The episode was pointed at directly by the show as a kind of joke. Lisa is the one who does the math out loud. She works it out on her calculator and announces that Bart must have been born much later than Homer and Marge have always claimed. This is the show winking at the audience. It is the show saying, yes, we know. We are doing it anyway. Matt Selman, one of the show's main producers, addressed the issue years later on social media. The Simpsons is a 32-year-old series, he said, where the characters do not age. So the canon must be flexible. It must be allowed to contradict itself. None of it really happened. It is all made up. This is a clean argument on the surface. A cartoon family that does not age over 36 years cannot have a fixed timeline. The math will not allow it. If Bart was 10 in 1989, he would be in his 40s now. If Homer and Marge met in 1974, they would be approaching 70. The show cannot show that. The show has chosen, over and over, to keep the family the same age while the world around them changes. Something has to give. But here is where the plot hole becomes more than a plot hole. It becomes the show eating itself. Because the show kept doing it. After that 90s show, the floating timeline kept floating. In 3 Gays of the Condo, a season 14 episode that aired in 2003, a flashback shows Homer and Marge as young parents in the late 1980s. In Lisa's Sax, set in 1995, the show says that in 1985, Bart was 5 years old and Lisa was 3. This contradicts both Lisa's first word and the original ages established in early seasons. The numbers do not add up no matter which episode is treated as the truth. Then came the season 37 premiere in September 2025. The episode is called Thrifty Ways to Thieve Your Mother. Marge and Lisa bond over a teen drama from the late 1990s. Lisa goes up to the attic to find an old DVD set. She finds Marge's old clothes from the 1990s, from when Marge was a teenager. Marge attends a 1990s nostalgia convention full of stars from teen shows of that era. She talks about being an adolescent when a cast member left Saturday Night Live in the year 2000. So now Marge was a teenager in the late 1990s. This means Homer and Marge did not meet in 1974. It also means they did not meet as a young dating couple in the early 1990s. It means they were both children when the show first started airing in 1989. They had not even met yet. The Simpsons aired its first episode about a family that, by the show's own newest canon, did not exist. 3 different origin stories, 3 different decades, the same 2 people. And it is not just Homer and Marge. The whole family runs into the same wall. Maggie's first birthday party happens in Lady Bouvier's Lover, which aired in 1994, putting her birth in 1993. Bart's birthday is celebrated in Radio Bart in 1991, making him 10 that year. Lisa turns 8 in Stark Raving Dad in 1991. None of these dates can be lined up with the dates in Lisa's first word, which gives Lisa a 1984 birth year. None of these can be lined up with That 90s Show, which puts Bart's conception in the early 1990s. None of these can be lined up with the season 37 premiere, which puts Marge in high school in the late 1990s. In season 36's premiere, Bart's Birthday, the show seemed to finally let Bart turn 11. He had a birthday on screen, he aged, and then, by the end of the same episode, the show put him back to 10 with a meta-joke about the status quo. Time in Springfield is a circle that breaks and reforms inside a single episode. The show has even joked about this directly. In a season 34 episode, Hostile Kirk Place, Homer says he was either 2 or 30 in 1986. He cannot remember. The show is laughing at itself. It does not matter. Pick a number. The number does not have to mean anything. But this is where the cost shows up. When a story stops respecting its own past, the past loses meaning. The Way We Was is a beautiful episode. Homer's slow walk home from prom in 1974, alone, while Marge realizes she actually wants him, is one of the most quietly emotional moments the show has ever made. It works because it really happened. Inside the world of the show, Homer Simpson really was a heartbroken teenager in 1974. Marge really did pick him up in her car. They really did fall in love that night. That 90s show takes that away. Hostile Kirk Place takes it away again. The season 37 premiere takes it away one more time. By the time the show is in its current era, none of those flashbacks happened, or all of them happened, or some of them happened to different versions of the same characters. The audience is left with no fixed ground. This is the real damage of the floating timeline, not the math. The math has never mattered to anyone but the most careful viewers. The damage is that the show has, episode by episode, untied its own emotional knots. The young Homer who walked home in the rain in 1974 does not exist anymore. The pregnant Marge who married Homer in 1980 does not exist anymore. The young couple living in a 1990s apartment, breaking up over a college professor, listening to grunge music, having a baby in a mini golf course, does not exist anymore either. They have all been written over, and the show seems aware of this. The fans are aware too. There are entire forums full of people sorting through every flashback, every birthday, every casual reference to the year, trying to find a version that holds. None hold. The version that holds for one episode falls apart in the next. The Simpsons has, over time, replaced its own memory with new memory, again and again, like a person who keeps editing their own story until none of it is solid. This is the foundation. Every other plot hole the show has stacks on top of this one. If the years do not match, the ages do not match. If the ages do not match, the school years do not match. If the school years do not match, the friendships and the rivalries and the slow buildup of who these people became does not match. The whole world rests on a soft floor. And once a show has decided that its main characters do not have a real past, the door is open for everything else. For characters who die and come back, for places that move, for ages that shift, for whole identities that turn out to be lies. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one episode in the show's run that walked through that open door more loudly than any other. An episode that took a beloved character with 8 years of slowly built history and revealed in a single half hour that everything the audience knew about him was a lie. The fans have never forgiven it. The writers have spent the last 2.5 decades trying to bury it, and it is the next stop on this list. Section 2. The Principal and the Pauper, the episode that broke continuity. On September 28, 1997, The Simpsons aired the second episode of its 9th season. It was the 180th episode the show had ever made. Most fans count the 8th season as the last great year of the show's golden run. The 9th season was supposed to be more of the same. The episode that opened the year was supposed to be a small one, a fun one, a celebration. It was meant to honor a character the writers had spent 8 years building up. What aired instead was the episode that broke The Simpsons. The setup is gentle. Principal Seymour Skinner, the long-suffering boss of Springfield Elementary, is celebrating 20 years on the job. The town gathers for a surprise party. His mother Agnes is there. His students are there. Lisa and Ralph give a presentation about his life. Ralph ends his part by saying he wants to be a principal when he grows up, or a caterpillar. The room is warm. The moment is sweet. This is a man being honored for 2 decades of service, and the show is letting him have the moment. Then a stranger walks in. He is wearing a military uniform. He says his name is Seymour Skinner. He says the man at the front of the room, the one being celebrated, is not who he claims to be. The room goes silent. The principal does not deny it. He admits in front of the whole town that he is not Seymour Skinner. He is a man named Armin Tamzarian, and the rest of the episode tells the audience how this happened. Armin Tamzarian, he explains, was a street punk from Capital City. He grew up like Bart. He stole from an old woman. He got caught. A judge gave him a choice. He could go to prison, or he could join the army. He joined the army. He was sent to Vietnam. There he met a fellow soldier named Seymour Skinner. The real Seymour was kind to him. The real Seymour gave him purpose. The real Seymour told him about his dream of becoming an elementary school principal in a small town called Springfield. The real Seymour was then declared missing in action and presumed dead. Armin took the news to Seymour's mother, Agnes. He went to her door to break the bad news. But before he could speak, Agnes saw him through the door and assumed he was her son. She was so happy. She was so relieved. Armin could not bring himself to tell her the truth. He took on Seymour's name. He took on Seymour's life. He moved to Springfield. He became principal. For 25 years he lived as Seymour Skinner. He never told a soul. The real Seymour was not dead. He had been captured. He had been sold into slavery. He had spent decades working in a sweatshop making shoes. Now he had returned, and he wanted his life back. The town tries to accept the real Seymour. They cannot. The real Seymour is rude. The real Seymour is harsh. The real Seymour scolds Bart for disrespecting the Pledge of Allegiance, which Bart had been doing all along. Agnes, his actual mother, finds him exhausting. The real Seymour is a stranger to everyone, even to the woman who gave birth to him. The town misses Armin, so they hatch a plan. They go to Capital City, where Armin has gone back to his old life. They convince him to come home. They bring him back to Springfield. The real Seymour refuses to leave. He shouts that he is the real Seymour Skinner. He sacrificed for his country. He will not give up his life because the town prefers a fake. The town responds by tying him to a chair in a freight train car and shipping him out of Springfield forever. The episode ends with a judge issuing a court order. From this moment on, the man known as Armin Tamzarian will be called Seymour Skinner. The town will never speak of this again. Anyone who mentions Tamzarian will be punished. The credits roll. The show was telling on itself. The judge's order is the show talking directly to the audience. We are pressing the reset button. None of this happened. We will not bring it up again. Forget forget what you just watched. The fans did not forget. The reaction was immediate and loud. Critics called the episode a betrayal. John Hine, the man who created the term jumping the shark to describe the moment a TV show goes downhill, wrote in his book that this was the episode where The Simpsons jumped the shark. He said he spotted the fin at the start of the 9th season when Principal Skinner's true identity was revealed as Armin Tamzarian. Ian Jones, writing in The Guardian in 2007, said the show became stupid in 1997 and pointed at this episode as the cause. He called it cheap, idle storytelling. Alan Sepinwall, writing for the Star-Ledger, said the episode was so unbelievable that even the characters in it were disowning it by the time the credits rolled. The people inside the show agreed. Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, has called this episode one of his least favorite. He called it a mistake. Harry Shearer, the voice actor who plays Skinner and many other characters, called the storyline arbitrary and gratuitous. He has said in interviews that he thought the writers were rewriting the character's history for no good reason. To understand why this hurts so much, the audience has to remember what Skinner was before this episode aired. Skinner was not a small character. He had been on the show since the very first season. The writers had given him layers, slowly, year after year. He was a Vietnam veteran, scarred by his time in the war. He had a tortured relationship with his domineering mother, Agnes, who treated him like a child even into his 50s. He worked under the eye of Superintendent Chalmers, who he could never quite satisfy. He had a slow and tender romance with Edna Krabappel, the 4th grade teacher. He was funny and sad and tightly wound and lonely. He felt like a real person. The writers had even given him a full character episode in Season 5. It was called Sweet Seymour Skinner's Badass Song. In that episode, Skinner is fired and falls into a deep depression. The audience watches him grieve the loss of his identity as principal. The episode is one of the most loved Skinner episodes in the show's history. The writer of that episode said that Skinner was his favorite character. The writer of The Principal and the Pauper, Ken Keeler, was a respected writer on the staff. He had written one of the most loved episodes of all time, El Viaje Misterioso de Nuestro Homer. He has defended the Skinner episode many times since it aired. He has said the episode was meant to satirize the very kind of fans who care about continuity. His point, he said, was that people get attached to a fixed identity for a character, but identity is fluid. The episode was supposed to be a joke about the very idea of canon. The fans did not see it that way. The fans saw 8 years of careful character work being thrown away in a single half hour. 8 years of Skinner's Vietnam memories. 8 years of his relationship with his mother. 8 years of his slow growth as a character. All of it suddenly belonging to someone else. A fake. A man who had been lying to everyone the whole time. It was as if the show had told the audience that Bart was not really Homer and Marge's son. As if the show had told the audience that Maggie had been adopted. The show had taken something that felt true and revealed it to be a lie. And then, in the most telling move of all, the show tried to take it back. In the years since The Principal and the Pauper aired, the show has done everything it can to forget it ever happened. Skinner appears in flashback after flashback as a Springfield local, a kid who grew up in town. His father, Sheldon Skinner, is shown to have served alongside Abraham Simpson in the Flying Hellfish military unit during World War II. Episodes mention Sheldon fighting in the Korean War. Agnes Skinner is shown to blame her unborn son Seymour for costing her a place in the Olympics during her youth, which only makes sense if Seymour really is her son. None of this fits the Tamzarian story. All of it goes back to the original Skinner. The show has even called itself out for the retcon. In a season 12 mockumentary episode called Behind the Laughter, a clip of the Principal and the Pauper is shown as an example of the show's storylines becoming gimmicky and silly. The show is laughing at its own bad decision. 3 seasons later, in I Annoyed Gruntbot, Lisa replaces her dead cat Snowball 2 with a near-identical cat that she also names Snowball 2. Skinner makes a small remark about it. Lisa snaps back at him by calling him Principal Tamzarian. The line is a knife. The show is admitting on screen that it pulled a cheap trick once and never recovered. But the trick had already been pulled. The damage was already done. Because The Principal and the Pauper was not just a bad episode. It was a turning point in how the show treated its own past. Before this episode, the writers had been careful with continuity. They built up character histories slowly. They paid attention to what previous episodes had said. They treated the audience like people who had been watching for years and would notice if something did not match. After this episode, that care started to slip. The show learned that it could rewrite anything, that a character's entire backstory could be replaced with a single line, that if the writers got bored with the rules they had built, they could simply break those rules and move on. The reset button at the end of the episode, where the judge orders everyone to stop calling the principal Tamzarian, was the show telling itself something. It was the show saying out loud that the rules did not have to apply if the writers did not want them to. This was not the first plot hole the show had ever introduced. It was the first one that broke the trust between the show and its audience. Before this, fans assumed that when the writers contradicted themselves, it was an accident. After this, fans had to consider that the writers simply did not care. And once that door is open, it cannot be closed. The Principal and the Pauper sits in the show's history like a wound that will not heal. It has been brought back up over and over for almost 30 years. Every time the show contradicts itself in a major way, fans point back to this episode. Every time a character's history gets rewritten, fans point back to this episode. It is the moment where the older, careful Simpsons died and a different show began to take its place. Some fans defend the episode. Some critics have written long pieces about how the episode is actually about the nature of identity, about how a person becomes who they pretend to be, about how Armin became Seymour through 25 years of living that life. There is a version of this story that works. There is a way to read it where Armin is the hero, where his lie became truth through repetition and love, where the real Seymour is simply a stranger now, no matter what his birth certificate says. Some viewers find that reading meaningful. Some find Agnes accepting Armin as her son to be a strange and beautiful thing. Even Mad Men, the prestige drama about identity in the 1960s, is sometimes accused of borrowing the same twist for its main character. But meaningful or not, the episode broke something. The show could not undo it. The show tried to undo it. 25 years later, the show is still trying. This is the pattern that the rest of the show would follow. A character is given a fixed history. The history gets rewritten for a single episode. The show tries to forget the rewrite. The audience does not. And every new contradiction sits on top of the last one until the show is buried under layers of versions of itself that do not match. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one character on the show who has been buried under more of these layers than anyone else. He has been every age. He has been from every place. He has lived through every war the show could think of. He claims to remember things that happened before humans existed. The writers have made his shifting age into a long-running joke, but the joke has gotten away from them. By any honest count, he should have died many times over, and yet there he is, still in his mansion, still scheming, still pulling the strings of his nuclear power plant. The next plot hole is the man who has been every age at once. Section 3. Mr. Burns is every age at once. Charles Montgomery Burns is the oldest man in Springfield. He is also one of the richest. He owns the nuclear power plant that runs the town. He is Homer Simpson's boss. He has been the show's main villain since the very first season. And he is, by any honest count of the evidence the show itself has put on screen, several different ages all at once. The show has stated his age out loud many times. The numbers do not match. They have never matched. Over 36 seasons, the writers have given Mr. Burns birthdays, ages, war records, school records, and personal stories that, if the audience tries to line them all up, leave a man who must be at least 100 years old, and at most, a creature older than the human species. The first hard number the show ever gave came in Season 2, in an episode called Simpson and Delilah, which aired in October 1990. In that episode, Mr. Burns is stated to be 81 years old. The show is 1 year old at this point. Burns is a fixed character with a fixed age. He is 81. The audience is given that number and expected to remember it. Then the show moved on, and the number started moving with it. In Season 6, in the cliffhanger episode, Who Shot Mr. Burns, Part 1, the audience is given a new number. Burns is 104. He is no longer 81. He has aged 23 years in 5 real years of television. In the next episode, Homer the Smithers, Burns is again 104. In a Valentine's Day episode called A Hunka Hunka Burns in Love, Burns is again 104. The number has settled, for the moment, at 104. It does not stay there. In the Season 15 episode, Fraudcast News, which aired in 2004, Burns says he was born in 1881. He says he has been 89 for a while now. If the year is 2004 and Burns is 89, his birth year is 1915. But he also says the year is 1881. Both claims come out of his mouth in the same episode. The audience cannot make both of them true. The show does not try to make both of them true. The show simply has Burns say 2 contradictory things and moves on. Then the joke gets bigger. In a later episode called Them, Robot, Homer asks Burns directly how old he really is. Burns does not give a number. He says only that the number has 4 digits in it. 4 digits means the smallest age he could possibly be is 1,000. The largest is over 9,000. He could be a man who has been alive for the entire recorded history of human civilization. He could be older than the pyramids. The show makes this even stranger in a Season 17 episode called The Seemingly Never-Ending Story. In that episode, Burns says his place of birth was Pangaea. Pangaea is the name geologists give to the giant single landmass that existed before all the continents broke apart. That landmass split up around 175 million years ago, before the dinosaurs were even halfway through their time on Earth. There were no humans. There were no animals that looked like humans. There was no one to have a birthday. If Burns is from Pangaea, he is older than every species of mammal that has ever lived. This is meant as a joke. The show knows it is a joke. The writers are pushing the gag as far as they can push it, just to see how far it will go. But the show keeps making these gags into canon, and the canon keeps stacking up, and the stack does not hold together. Burns has said many specific things about his past that, by the rules of normal time, would place him in the late 1800s. He has said he had a driver's license that expired in 1909. He has said he graduated from Yale University in 1914. He has said he survived 12 different bad economic times and 8 panics. He has been shown in a woodcut drawing from the 1800s, frightening children, and in that drawing he looks exactly as old as he does now. Bart researches him in one episode and finds an old photograph of Mr. Burns being punched in the face by Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt was president from 1901 to 1909. In the photograph, Burns looks exactly as old as he does now. The Yale graduation date alone causes problems. To graduate Yale in 1914, a person normally has to be around 22 years old. That puts Burns' birth year at around 1892. If the year of the show is even close to the present, that would make him over 130 years old. Then there is World War II. Burns served in World War II. The show has been clear about this many times. He served in a unit called the Flying Hellfish, alongside Homer's grandfather, Abraham Simpson. The two men were in combat together. They were in the Battle of the Bulge. They found a stash of stolen artwork in a German manor house and made a deal that the last surviving member of their squad would inherit it all. This deal becomes the plot of an entire Season 7 episode called Raging Abe Simpson and His Grumbling Grandson in The Curse of the Flying Hellfish. In every flashback to that war, Burns appears to be a young man. He is in his 20s or his early 30s. He is fighting on the front lines. He looks healthy and active. The same goes for Abraham Simpson. The two are roughly the same age in those flashbacks, but in the present day of the show, Burns is much older than Abraham Simpson. Abraham looks old. He has white hair and a hunched back and a constant stream of confused old man monologues. But Burns looks far older than Abraham. Burns looks like a corpse who learned to walk again. His skin hangs off his bones. His arms are sticks. He has to be lifted in and out of his chair. There is no way these two men served together as young men in 1944 and ended up looking the way they do now, unless one of them aged at a normal speed and the other aged at 4 times the normal speed. The show has tried in different episodes to explain this in different ways. In some flashbacks, Burns and Abraham are exactly the same age. In others, Burns is younger. In a book called The Simpsons Uncensored Family Album, the Simpson family tree puts Burns and Abraham on the same row, meaning they should be roughly the same age. The book also includes a news report that puts Burns at 25 years old when Abraham was 29, meaning Burns is 4 years younger than Abraham. None of this matches the Burns the audience sees today. It gets worse. There is a Season 7 episode called Mother Simpson, in which Homer's long-lost mother returns. In a Season 8 episode called Homer the Smithers, the show casually mentions that Mr. Burns' own mother is still alive. She is 122 years old. She lives in a nursing home. Burns dislikes speaking to her because she once had an affair with President William Howard Taft. Taft was president from 1909 to 1913. If she had her affair with him during his presidency, and she is 122 now, the math gets very strange very fast. If Burns is 104, his mother gave birth to him at 18. If Burns is older, she had him even younger. If she is 122 and Burns is over 1,000, the timeline collapses entirely. There is also the issue of his Oldest Man in Springfield title. In a Season 11 episode called The Mansion Family, the show holds an award ceremony for the oldest man in Springfield. The winner is a man named Cornelius Chapman. He is 108 years old. The show makes a point of saying that he is the oldest. Burns is in the audience. He is not the oldest. Cornelius receives his award from Britney Spears. She kisses him on the cheek. The shock kills him. He dies right there on the stage. Burns then takes the title. Burns is the new oldest man in Springfield. This means Burns must be younger than 108 years old, because Cornelius held the title until he died, and Burns inherited it. So Burns cannot be 123, the age he stated in Fraudcast News. He cannot be 1,000, the age he hinted at in Them Robot. He cannot be older than humans, the age he claimed when he said he was from Pangea. He has to be 107 or younger, because that is the only age that lines up with him being not quite as old as Cornelius Chapman before Cornelius died. But the show keeps giving him older ages. Even after the Mansion family, the show puts him on the Titanic. The Titanic sank in 1912. He says he was a passenger. In an episode called American History Excellent, Burns goes to prison and a guard finds a card in his belongings. The guard mistakes it for a Social Security card. Burns shouts that it is just an SS card. The SS was a unit of the Nazi army. The implication is that Burns served in the Nazi SS during the early part of World War II before defecting to the American side. His Social Security number, when shown, is 000000002. He says he was the second person ever to receive a Social Security number. He is angry that Franklin Roosevelt got 0001. The first Social Security cards were given out in 1936. So Burns was alive in 1936. So Burns was alive in 1881. So Burns was alive on the Titanic in 1912. So Burns was alive in Pangaea 175 million years ago. None of these can all be true. The show has, slowly, made Burns's age into one of its longest-running jokes. The writers know they are doing it. The audience knows they are doing it. The whole point of the joke is that Burns is impossibly old, and the audience is supposed to laugh at how impossible it is. The strangeness is the punchline. The trouble is that the joke replaced the character. Mr. Burns started out as a sharp piece of writing. He was a man old enough to remember the days when working people had no rights, when bosses could do anything they wanted, when factories ran on the labor of children. The original Burns was a satire of a specific kind of old American wealth. He was the ghost of the worst parts of the early 1900s, still walking around, still squeezing the life out of his workers. The fact that he was old mattered. His age was part of his bite. But by giving him every age, the show took that bite away. He is no longer a man from a specific time. He is a man from no time. He is from the 1880s and the 1990s and Pangaea and the future. He is whatever age the joke needs him to be in any given episode. He is never one thing long enough to mean anything. And this is the second deepest plot hole in the show, after the floating timeline of Homer and Marge. Because Mr. Burns is the show's longest-running villain. He is the man who blocked out the sun. He is the man who tried to steal candy from a baby. He is the man who has run the nuclear power plant that anchors the entire town. The audience is meant to know him. The audience is meant to remember what he has done. But the show will not let him have a fixed past. The show will not let him have a real history. He floats above the timeline of his own life, the way Homer and Marge float above theirs. A man who has been every age cannot really have lived through any of those ages. A man who claims to have been on the Titanic and at the Battle of the Bulge and in the Spanish-American War, and in the SS, and at Yale in 1914, and as a child during the McKinley administration, cannot really have done any of those things, because the math will not allow it. The show has made his backstory into a buffet. Pick whichever piece works for the episode, throw the rest away. This is what happens when a show stops respecting its own past. The biggest characters end up the most damaged. The villain stops being a villain from somewhere and becomes a villain from anywhere, which means a villain from nowhere. The audience cannot fear him in the way they once could. He cannot really be tied to any specific evil because his timeline cannot really be tied to any specific year. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But Mr. Burns is not the only thing in Springfield that floats. The town itself does the same thing. It has been by the ocean and in the desert and in the mountains and on the plains. It has had a coast and a canyon and snow-capped peaks and palm trees. It has been in every part of the United States and none of them. The show has spent 36 years refusing to say which state it is in. And the refusal has finally become a real problem because the show has affirmatively contradicted itself in ways that no joke can paper over. The next plot hole is the question of where the Simpsons actually live. Section 4. Where the hell is Springfield? The Simpsons live in a town called Springfield. The show has said this since the very first episode. Every fan knows it. The opening credits show the family driving home through the streets of Springfield. The signs say Springfield. The newspaper says Springfield. The trophies and the school banners and the police badges all say Springfield. What none of them say is which state Springfield is in. For 36 seasons, the show has refused to give a clear answer. At first, this was a small joke, a wink at the audience, a way of saying that the family could be anywhere, that the show was about a kind of American family that lived in a kind of American town, and that the specifics did not matter. Springfield was meant to be everywhere and nowhere at once. The reason this works as a joke is that the name Springfield is one of the most common town names in the United States. 34 different states have a town called Springfield. Some have more than one. There is a Springfield in Massachusetts, and a Springfield in Illinois, and a Springfield in Missouri, and a Springfield in Oregon, and a Springfield in Vermont, and on and on. The town name does not narrow anything down. It does the opposite. It is a name that points everywhere at once. Matt Groening, the creator of the show, has said in interviews that he picked the name on purpose. He grew up in Portland, Oregon, watching old reruns of a show called Father Knows Best. That show was set in a town called Springfield. As a child, Groening assumed it was the Springfield near Portland. When he learned later that it was just a generic name, he liked the idea so much that he used it himself. He said he figured everyone would think the show was set in their own Springfield, and, he said, they do. So far so good. A nice little running joke. A clean piece of writing. The town is everywhere because the family is meant to be a stand-in for every family. The problem is that over time, the show stopped being content with the joke and started actively contradicting itself. Not just leaving the question open, affirmatively giving the audience information that cannot be true under any rules of geography that exist in the real world. The biggest example came in the Simpsons movie in 2007. In one scene, Ned Flanders is talking to Bart and listing the 4 states that share a border with Springfield. He names them: Ohio, Nevada, Maine, Kentucky. This list is not just unhelpful, it is impossible. Ohio and Kentucky do share a border in real life. They sit right next to each other along the Ohio River. But Nevada is on the other side of the country, in the desert west. Maine is on the far northeastern coast. There is no state in the United States that touches all 4 of those states at the same time. The list does not describe any real place. It cannot describe any real place. The writers chose 4 state names that, when put together, made the location of Springfield not just unclear, but actually impossible. The film's commentary on the DVD admits this was on purpose. The writers were going for a joke. They wanted to make sure that no fan could ever pin down the town's real location, because the 4 states they picked could not possibly border each other. But the contradictions go much deeper than that one scene. They run through the entire show. In one episode called Behind the Laughter, the family is described as a Northern Kentucky family. The line was changed in later airings to say Missouri instead. The writers could not even agree after the episode aired what state to put them in. In another episode called Mo Letter Blues, Mo gives Springfield's zip code as 80085. That zip code does not exist in real life. But all the zip codes that begin with 800 are in Colorado. So if the audience takes the number at face value, Springfield is in Colorado. In another episode, Hans Mollman's driver's license is shown clearly enough to read. The license gives an address in Springfield with a zip code of 90701. That zip code does exist. It belongs to Artesia and Cerritos in California. So under that rule, Springfield is in California. In A Tale of Two Springfields, the area code is given as 636. That area code is real and belongs to Missouri. The real city of Springfield, Missouri has a different area code, 417. But Missouri does have the 636 code in another part of the state. So under that rule, Springfield is in Missouri. The video game called The Simpsons Hit and Run also gives the area code as 636. The KBBL radio station's call letters, by the rules the FCC uses to give out station names in the United States, would belong to a station in Missouri. Springfield, Missouri is the closest match. The Simpson family's address, 742 Evergreen Terrace, is a real address. It exists in Savannah, Missouri. But Savannah's area code is 816, not 636. So even when the show points at Missouri, it points at two different parts of the state. The show keeps adding more clues. In scenes from the class struggle in Springfield, a wealthy character named Evelyn Peters mentions that she has food shipped in from Washington State. This means Springfield is not in Washington, because nobody ships food in from their own state. In Mother Simpson, Homer's mother is shown to have a license from Wisconsin, though this might be a fake one because she is on the run. In When You Dish Upon a Star, Alec Baldwin tells Homer that most people do not even know where Springfield is. Homer agrees and says he is not even sure himself. The show pokes at the joke openly. In an episode called Sunday Cruddy Sunday, Marge is about to say the name of the state out loud. She begins to say Ohio. Then she breaks off and says, "Oh hi, Maud," to a passing neighbor. The reveal is interrupted by another character. The audience never hears the answer. In Bart's Comet, a comet is heading toward Springfield. Congress is debating whether to evacuate the town. A congressman says it is unanimous. "We are going to approve the bill to evacuate the town of Springfield in the great state of," and another congressman cuts him off to add a small extra item to the bill. The state name, again, is never spoken. In Blame It on Lisa, Lisa points at a map and says vague things about where Springfield is. None of the clues match each other. The 138th episode spectacular calls Springfield the entertainment capital of this state. There is no state in America whose entertainment capital is named Springfield. The writers have even joked about it themselves. The director, David Silverman, has said in interviews that Springfield is in a fictional state called North Tacoma. He pointed out that on Homer's driver's license, the abbreviation for the state is sometimes shown as NT and sometimes TA. The state, in other words, is made up. There is also a couch gag at the start of one episode where the camera zooms out from the Simpson house, through the neighborhood, through Springfield, through the country, and into space. The location shown for the house places it in Springfield, Illinois, but Illinois does not match almost any of the other clues the show has given, so this couch gag, taken as canon, contradicts the rest of the show. There are physical contradictions too, beyond the words. Springfield has been shown to have a deep canyon. It has been shown to have snow-covered mountains. It has been shown to have a seaside coast with offshore oil rigs. It has been shown to have deserts. It has been shown to have huge redwood forests. It has been shown to have a lake called Lake Springfield. No real place in the United States has all of these things at the same time. In one episode, Lisa says that West Springfield is 3 times the size of Texas. This would make Springfield itself larger than several countries. In another episode, the population of Springfield is given as around 60,000, which is the size of a normal small American city. The town is both a normal small city and an area larger than several countries. Both of these things are stated as canon. The show has even shown maps in episodes that contradict each other. In Marge vs. the Monorail, the salesman Lyle Lanley shows a map of the United States with 3 small towns marked on it. Brockway is shown in South Carolina. Ogdenville is shown in Arizona. North Haverbrook is shown somewhere around South Dakota or Nebraska. Marge later drives to North Haverbrook from Springfield. The drive is shown to take a normal length of time. None of those locations make sense if Springfield is in any single fixed state. There are clues about the time zone, too. In a Season 5 episode called Bart Gets Famous, 4 clocks are shown on a wall behind a radio host. They show the times in Los Angeles, Springfield, New York, and Boston. Los Angeles is shown at 8:25 in the morning. Springfield is shown at a time later than 8 o'clock, but not specified. New York and Boston are also shown. The clock arrangement rules out Springfield being on Pacific time, so the entire West Coast, including California and Washington and Oregon, is ruled out by this clue. But other clues in other episodes put Springfield in California, which is on Pacific time. This is the heart of the problem. Each clue, taken on its own, is a small joke. Each clue rules out something. Each clue points somewhere. But when the clues are stacked together, they rule out every state in the country. There is no real place where all the clues can be true at the same time. The town has no possible location. It exists in a hole between the states. The fans have spent decades trying to solve this. There are entire long-running arguments online about which state has the fewest contradictions. Some fans say Illinois fits the most clues. Some fans say Missouri. Some fans say Oregon because of Matt Groening's home state. Some fans say it must be a fictional state. Each answer fails on some piece of evidence the show has given. Matt Groening has, over the years, given a few different answers. He has joked, for the official couch gag of one episode, that the true location of Springfield is in any state but yours. To promote the Simpsons movie, the show held a contest among real American towns named Springfield to see which one would host the movie's premiere. The winner was Springfield, Vermont. For one weekend, that was the official Springfield. After the weekend, it stopped being so. In another interview, Groening said his Springfield was the one in Oregon, near where he grew up. Then later he walked that back. The producer Mike Reese, in his book about working on the show, said Groening had told him in private that the answer was Oregon, but added that the writers all chose to ignore this so they could keep the joke going. The show's running gag has, in the end, become its own plot hole. A normal town, in a normal show, has a fixed location. The audience knows where the family lives. The audience knows what kind of weather the family gets, what kind of laws they live under, what kind of geography surrounds them. This grounds the show in reality. It tells the audience where they are. The Simpsons gave up that grounding. Springfield is in the south, where alligators live. It is in the north, where it snows. It is in the desert, where the air is dry. It is on the coast, where the air is salty. It is in the mountains, in the plains, in the canyon country, in the forest country. It is everywhere and nowhere. The town is, in the end, a kind of cartoon ghost. It can be wherever the joke of the week needs it to be. The cost is that it is never really anywhere. The audience can never picture it on a real map, never connect it to a real climate, never see it as a real place where real people might live. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The town has even traveled outside of itself. The family has been chased out of so many states by their own bad behavior that by the rules the show has set up, they should not even be able to live where they live. There is one specific episode where Marge crosses off, one by one, every state in the country except for 2. By the end of the episode, the Simpsons are not allowed to set foot in almost any state in America. And then, in the very next season, they go on vacation. The next plot hole is the running joke of a family that has been banned from almost every place they have ever visited, and yet keeps visiting them anyway. Section 5. Maud Flanders, Bleeding Gums Murphy, Murphy and the death that never quite sticks. Death is supposed to be the one rule that even the floppiest cartoon respects. A character dies, the audience grieves, the show moves on. The death is the ending of that person's place in the story. It cannot be undone. It is the final word. The Simpsons does not work this way. Over 36 seasons, the show has killed off many beloved characters. Some of them stayed dead. Some of them came back. Some of them came back as ghosts. Some of them came back without explanation. Some of them came back, were declared dead a second time, and then came back again. The show has built a strange kind of graveyard, where the rules of who is dead and who is alive shift around depending on what the writers feel like doing in any given week. The clearest example, and the one that started the whole pattern, is Maude Flanders. Maude was Ned Flanders' first wife, the kind, religious, sweet-natured mother of Rod and Todd. She had been on the show since season 2. She was not a main character, but she was a steady one. She was part of the texture of Springfield. The Flanders family was built around her. Her quiet voice, her old-fashioned values, her gentle pushback against her husband's worst tendencies. She was a real presence on the show for 10 years. She died in February 2000 in a season 11 episode called Alone Again Natura Diddly. The death scene is famous for how strange it is. The Simpsons are at a stock car race. A row of cheerleaders is firing free t-shirts into the crowd from compressed air cannons. Homer wants a shirt. He shouts for one. The cheerleaders fire a full salvo of t-shirts at him. Homer bends down at the last second to pick up a hairpin off the floor. The shirts miss him completely. They hit Maude, who is standing behind him, and knock her over the back of the bleachers. She falls a long way to the parking lot below. She is dead before the medics can reach her. It happens fast. It happens absurdly. It happens in a way that feels almost like a joke, except the show plays it straight. Ned is broken by the loss. Rod and Todd are devastated. The funeral is a real funeral. The grief is real grief. By the end of the episode, Maude is buried, and Ned is starting to think about how he will live without her. The reason for the death, behind the scenes, was practical. The actress who voiced Maude, Maggie Roswell, had been flying back and forth between her home in Denver and the show's recording studio in Los Angeles for years. The cost of the flights was eating up most of her pay. She asked Fox for a raise. The pay raise the network offered her did not cover her travel costs. She quit. The producers, instead of recasting the role, decided to kill the character off. The show's executive producer at the time, Mike Scully, also admitted that killing off a character would help boost ratings during a sweeps period, when networks pay close attention to how many people are watching. The producers chose not to tell critics ahead of time which character would die, hoping the mystery would draw more viewers. So Maude was killed. She was buried. The story moved on, except it did not. Maude has appeared again and again in the years since her death. She has shown up as a ghost in a Treehouse of Horror episode, where she comes back to tell the family 3 horror stories. She has appeared in a regular episode called Bart Has Two Mommies, where she is shown looking down on her sons from heaven. She has appeared in a future set episode called Holidays of Future Past, where she remarries Ned as a ghost bride. She has appeared in a Treehouse of Horror segment as a demon sleeping with Satan. She has appeared in a season 28 episode called Flanders' Ladder, where she meets Bart in ghost form. She has appeared in flashbacks. She has appeared in dream sequences. She has appeared in pictures Ned still keeps in his house. The actress Maggie Roswell eventually returned to the show in 2002 after working out a deal that let her record her lines from her home in Denver. She has been voicing Maude in flashbacks and ghost scenes ever since. The strangest part is that the show has, in a way, allowed her death to never really land. There is a scene in a later episode called Waiting for Duffman, where Bart and Lisa are playing with t-shirt cannons. Homer says cheerfully that no one has ever been killed by a t-shirt cannon. A t-shirt fires off and hits a picture of Maude in Ned's house. Ned looks straight at the camera. The audience is supposed to remember that, yes, somebody was killed by a t-shirt cannon, and it was Maude. The show is admitting it remembers. The show is also admitting it does not really treat the death as fixed. There is one more wrinkle. In an episode from season 6 called Lisa's Wedding, set in the future, Maude is shown alive. She is at the wedding. She is fine. The episode aired 5 years before Maude was killed, so the future set episode shows a future where she did not die. Once she did die, that future episode no longer made sense. The show has not gone back and corrected it. It just sits there. A future where Maude lived in a show that later killed her. The Maude story is the cleanest example of the pattern, but it is far from the only one. Bleeding Gums Murphy died in a season 6 episode called Round Springfield, which aired in 1995. He was Lisa's saxophone mentor, a jazz musician with a rough life and a beautiful sound. The episode tells his backstory, follows Lisa as she visits him in the hospital, and ends with his death from an unspecified illness. The final scene shows Lisa playing his saxophone alone in a graveyard, while his ghost appears in the clouds and joins her for one last duet. It is one of the most moving scenes in the show's history, but Bleeding Gums was kept dead in only the loosest sense. He has appeared as a ghost in later episodes. He has appeared in flashbacks. The show later revealed that he was the secret biological brother of Dr. Hibbert, which adds backstory to a man who was already dead. He has been given a nephew, who appeared in an episode called Lisa Gets the Blues. He has been given a son, who appeared in an episode called The Sound of Bleeding Gums. The character keeps growing, even though he no longer exists. The strangest of all the death stories is Dr. Marvin Monroe. Marvin Monroe was a recurring character in the early seasons, a self-help radio show host and therapist. He treated The Simpsons more than once. He was voiced by Harry Shearer. In season 7, the show aired a clip show episode called The Simpsons 138th Episode Spectacular. In that episode, the audience is given a trivia question. Which two popular characters have died in the past year? The answer given is, if you said Bleeding Gums Murphy and Dr. Marvin Monroe, you are wrong. They were never popular. The joke is that Monroe is dead. The show then drove this home by naming a hospital after him in a later episode, the Marvin Monroe Memorial Hospital. His tombstone has been seen on screen. Multiple episodes have referred to him as dead. Then, 10 years later, in a season 15 episode called Diatribe of a Mad Housewife, Marvin Monroe walks into a bookstore. He is alive. Marge is shocked. She says she thought he was dead. Monroe shrugs and says he had been very sick. That is his entire explanation. He was very sick. The show treats this as a joke. The audience is meant to laugh at the absurdity. Monroe was dead, and now he is alive, and the only explanation is that he had a long illness. But then it happens again. In a season 29 episode called Flanders Ladder, Monroe appears as a ghost alongside other dead characters. So now he is dead a second time. He has died twice. He has been alive between the two deaths. The show has never explained any of this. Captain Jack the Alligator from the Florida Vacation episode is another example. He is run over by Homer's airboat. The town of Palm Corners holds a funeral for him. He lies in state at the state capitol. He is, by every sign the episode gives, completely dead. Then at the end of the episode, he walks out of the Capitol building alive. He had only been knocked out. The show's executive producer, Mike Scully, has admitted in interviews that this twist makes no sense, because a cut scene that would have explained how the alligator got into the capital was removed for time. The death and the resurrection both happen in the same episode, with no real explanation for either. Dr. Nick Riviera, the cheerful, incompetent doctor who said, "Hi, everybody," is supposedly killed in the Simpsons movie. A piece of glass slices through him during the dome chaos. He is gone. He has had his moment. The very next year, he appears in a season 20 episode called Lost Verizon. No one mentions his death. No one explains his return. He is simply alive again. Mona Simpson, Homer's mother, was thought to be dead for many seasons. Then she came back alive in a season 7 episode called Mother Simpson. Then she really did die in a season 19 episode called Mona Leavesa. Her ashes were scattered. Then her ghost has appeared in later episodes. Frank Grimes, the man who became Homer's enemy, dies at the end of Homer's Enemy in season 8. He is electrocuted in his own self-destruction. His funeral is held. Homer falls asleep at the funeral and the mourners laugh. The death sticks. Frank Grimes does not come back as a major character, but he does come back as a ghost in a Treehouse of Horror sequence in season 26, and in another Halloween episode in season 27. The show plays with his death as a joke, even though the original death was meant to be the end. Edna Krabappel, Bart's teacher, is treated differently. Her actress, Marsha Wallace, died in real life in 2013. The show retired the character with respect. A small chalkboard tribute, a quiet scene of Ned remembering her. She has not come back as a ghost. She has not come back at all, in any meaningful way, because the loss outside the show was real, and the writers chose to honor it. But for almost everyone else, death on The Simpsons has the same weight as a costume change. A character can be dead in one episode, alive in the next, dead again in the third, and back as a ghost in the fourth. The rules shift. The deaths do not hold. This is what happens when a show stops respecting its own past. The line between alive and dead, the line between gone and present, becomes another rule the writers can break whenever they want. A death that means nothing is not really a death. It is just a temporary absence. The audience cannot really mourn a character if the show might bring them back next week with a single throwaway line. The pattern even shows up with smaller characters. Mrs. Glick, an elderly Springfield resident, was killed off in a season 23 episode called Replaceable You. The show held a small funeral for her. Then she kept appearing in later episodes as if nothing had happened. The show had simply forgotten that it had killed her, or it did not care. She is alive in some episodes, dead in others, and the audience is left to figure out which version is current. Lionel Hutz, the lawyer, and Troy McClure, the washed-up actor, were both retired from the show after their voice actor Phil Hartman was murdered in 1998. The show never gave them an in-universe explanation. They were never killed off. They simply stopped appearing. The audience was left to assume they died, or moved away, or something else. There has been no closure for those characters. They just vanished. The cumulative effect of all these deaths and undeaths is that the audience cannot trust the most basic rule of any story. When a character dies, the story is supposed to mean something by killing them. When a character survives, the story is supposed to mean something by sparing them. The Simpsons has slowly stripped these meanings away. A death is just a way to fill an episode. A return is just a way to fill another episode. The lives of the characters do not have weight anymore because the show is willing to undo any of them at any time. The Maud Flanders death was the first big one of its kind. It taught the show that a major character could be killed for outside reasons, mourned for an episode, and then quietly brought back as a ghost or in flashbacks for years afterward. Once that lesson was learned, the show applied it everywhere. The graveyard in Springfield is full of people who do not stay buried. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one character who has not died, but who has done something almost as strange. He has held more jobs than any one person could possibly hold in a single lifetime. He has been an astronaut, he has been a boxer, he has been a food critic, he has been a beer baron, he has been a country music manager, he has won a Grammy, and yet every Monday morning he is back at the same desk in the same job he was supposedly fired from in the 3rd episode of the entire show. The next plot hole is the working life of Homer Simpson. Section 6. Homer's 188 jobs and the nuclear plant job he always has. Homer Simpson works at the Springfield nuclear power plant. He has worked there since the very first episode of the show. He sits at a desk in a section called Sector 7G. His title is Safety Inspector. He answers to Mr. Burns. He clocks in at the start of every workday and clocks out at the end. This is who he is. This is what he does. Except Homer has also been an astronaut, and a professional boxer, and a food critic, and a snowplow driver, and a country music manager, and a beer baron, and a missionary, and a monorail conductor, and a grease salesman, and a fortune cookie writer, and a bodyguard, and a baby proofer, and a conceptual artist, and the mayor of Springfield, and the police chief, and a carnival worker, and a farmer, and a chauffeur, and a soccer referee, and a homeless person's homeless person, and a celebrity assistant, and a power plant CEO, and a Krusty the Clown impersonator. He has won a Grammy. Matt Groening has said in interviews that Homer held 188 different jobs in just the first 400 episodes of the show. The number has since climbed to around 275. Some of these jobs lasted for an entire episode. Some lasted for a few minutes. Some happened in flashback. Some happened in fantasy sequences. Some came up in a single line of dialogue, mentioned once and never again. Homer himself once recited a long list of his own jobs. It happens at the end of a season 13 episode called Papa's Got a Brand New Badge. He is lying in bed next to Marge, talking about his life. He says, with no special emphasis, that he has been a boxer, a mascot, an astronaut, a baby proofer, an imitation Krusty, a truck driver, a hippie, a plow driver, a food critic, a conceptual artist, a grease salesman, a carny, the mayor, a grifter, a bodyguard for the mayor, a country western manager, a garbage commissioner, a mountain climber, a farmer, an inventor, Smithers, Poochie, a celebrity assistant, a power plant worker, a fortune cookie writer, a beer baron, a Quickie Mart clerk, a homophobe, and a missionary. He says this in one breath. He says this as a list of things he has actually done. That list alone is 29 jobs, and it is not even half of the real total. The list does not include his time as the mayor's bodyguard before he was mayor himself. It does not include his time as the police chief, which he holds at the very moment he is reciting the list. It does not include his time as a stadium organist. It does not include his time as a snowplow company owner. It does not include his time as the manager of a country music star. The pattern of how these jobs come and go is the same in almost every episode. Homer gets fired from the power plant, or he quits, or something happens that pulls him away from his desk. He throws himself into the new job with full energy. He becomes successful at it for a short while. Then something goes wrong. The new job ends. By the start of the next episode, he is back at the power plant, sitting in Sector 7G as if nothing has changed. The trouble is that the things he does in these other jobs are not small. He does not just dabble. He achieves things that, in any normal world, would change his life forever. In an episode called Deep Space Homer in Season 5, NASA picks Homer to fly into space. He goes into space. He flies a real space mission. He returns to Earth as a national hero. The episode is famous and well-loved. The next week, Homer is back at the power plant. No one mentions his trip to space. No one calls him an astronaut. The fact that he is one of the few people in human history to have left the planet does not seem to follow him. He sits at his desk, eats a donut, and the show moves on. In an episode called Homer at the Bat in Season 3, Homer plays professional softball. He is part of a team that includes 9 real Major League Baseball players, all voicing themselves. The team wins a championship. The next week, Homer is back at the power plant. In a Season 7 episode called Homer Palooza, Homer becomes a touring rock musician. He travels the country with famous bands, getting hit in the stomach with a cannonball as part of his act. The tour ends. He goes back to the power plant. In a Season 4 episode called Mr. Plow, Homer buys a snowplow and starts a business. The business takes off. He becomes a famous local figure. He gets a song on the local TV channel. The business folds, and he goes back to the power plant. In a Season 8 episode called The Twisted World of Marge Simpson, Homer is briefly involved in a pretzel franchise war that leads to a fight with the Springfield Mafia. The episode is a whole crime story. The next week, the power plant. In a Season 10 episode called Lard of the Dance, Homer becomes a grease dealer. He pulls Bart out of school to help him steal grease from kitchens and restaurants. He is robbed of his life savings. The next week, the power plant. In a Season 13 episode called Papa's Got a Brand New Badge, Homer becomes the Springfield police chief. He runs the entire police force. He arrests the mayor for corruption. By the end of the episode, he has saved the town. He goes back to the power plant. In a Season 14 episode called See Dough, Homer schemes his way into becoming the actual CEO of the Springfield nuclear power plant. He owns the company. Mr. Burns works for him. By the end of the episode, the situation has somehow reset. Mr. Burns is in charge again. Homer is back in Sector 7G. The show does not always pretend to forget. Sometimes it hangs a small lampshade on the absurdity. In some episodes, characters will mention some of Homer's old careers in passing. Marge might bring up his time as a grease dealer, or his stint as an astronaut, but those mentions do not last more than a second. The job he held in the previous episode is treated as something that happened in another lifetime, not as part of his ongoing life. The thing that makes this strange, beyond the sheer number of careers, is that Homer is shown to have skills he should not be able to forget. In a Season 9 episode called Das Bus, Homer starts an internet business. He calls it CompuGlobal Hyper Meganet. He has no real product, but the business attracts the attention of Bill Gates, who buys it just to crush it. The episode shows that Homer is computer literate enough to set up a company, hire himself as a vice president, and run a real online operation. Then, just a few seasons later, in a Season 11 episode called Missionary Impossible, Homer is shown to be helpless with computers. He cannot operate basic software. He cannot use email. He acts as if the entire concept of the internet is brand new to him. This is a person who was running an online company a few episodes earlier. The skills do not stick. The growth does not stick. Each new episode treats Homer as a blank slate, or as a slate that holds whatever skills the writers need him to have for that week. Then there is the question of how he got the power plant job in the first place. In the third episode of the entire show, Homer's Odyssey from Season 1, Homer gets fired from the power plant. He has been working there as a low-level worker. He crashes an electric cart into a vent and is let go. He becomes depressed. He almost takes his own life. Instead, he turns his life around by becoming a passionate fighter for safety in Springfield. He leads protests outside the power plant. The protests get so loud that Mr. Burns has to do something to make them stop. Mr. Burns offers Homer a brand new job just made up for him on the spot called Safety Inspector. Homer takes the job. The protests end. So the entire job he holds for the rest of the show is a job that did not exist before he was fired. The job was created out of nothing just to shut him up. He is a safety inspector at a job that did not have a safety inspector before he came along, working at a plant where, by the show's own jokes, almost no actual safety is enforced. There is also the question of how he got hired in the first place, before he was fired. According to the original story given in The Way We Was, the Season 2 episode about Homer and Marge meeting in high school, Homer's guidance counselor told him to apply for a job at the nuclear power plant that would be opening soon. This places his hiring in the mid-1970s, when he was a recent high school graduate. But in another episode called The Blunder Years, set in Season 13, Homer is hypnotized into thinking he is 12 years old again. He recalls his childhood. The recollection places his childhood 30 years before the episode aired, around 1972. So the timing of when the plant opened and when Homer started working there does not line up between episodes. The Season 7 episode, Much Apoo About Nothing, shows Homer's actual paycheck on screen. The check shows that his annual salary is around $24,000 before deductions and around $18,000 after. This is a low income for a family of 5 with a single earner. By that math, Homer should not be able to afford the house, the car, the trips, the appliances, the constant new schemes. The show treats his money as flexible. Sometimes the family is dirt poor. Sometimes they take international vacations. Sometimes Homer buys an entire snowplow and a billboard. There is one more strange piece of the puzzle. Homer has been promoted, demoted, fired, and rehired at the power plant many times. He has been an executive. He has been a manager. He has been a low-level worker. He has been Mr. Burns' personal assistant. He has briefly owned the entire plant. None of these moves stick. He always returns to Sector 7G as the safety inspector, sitting at the same desk, eating the same donut, ignoring the same warning lights on his console. In a Season 8 episode called Homer's Enemy, the show wrote a whole episode that turned this absurdity into the plot. A new employee named Frank Grimes is hired at the plant. Grimes is a serious, hard-working, real-world type of man. He has had a hard life. He has earned everything he owns. He looks at Homer and cannot understand how this man has any of the things he has. He cannot understand how Homer is the safety inspector at a nuclear plant. He cannot understand how Homer has a wife, a house, 3 children, 2 cars, and a dog. Grimes presents a chart at one point showing that ever since Homer became safety inspector, accidents at the plant have doubled and near meltdowns have tripled. The chart is real evidence within the show. The numbers are stated as fact. Homer is a danger to public safety, and the show is showing the audience the math. Frank Grimes loses his mind by the end of the episode. He runs through the plant pretending to be Homer. He grabs a high-voltage wire while shouting that he does not need safety gloves because he is Homer Simpson. He dies on the spot. His funeral is held. Homer falls asleep at the funeral. The room laughs. The audience laughs. The show moves on. The lesson the show is teaching in that episode is that the rules of the world do not apply to Homer. He is the show. The show works because of him. If the rules of cause and effect held him to account, the show could not exist. So the rules do not hold. He keeps his job. He keeps his family. He keeps his happy life. The man man who tried to point out the contradictions died for the trouble. This is the real plot hole behind all the other plot holes about Homer's jobs. It is not just that he has had too many. It is that none of them have any real weight. He becomes a Grammy-winning musician, then forgets how to write a song. He becomes an astronaut, then forgets how to use a computer. He becomes the mayor and the police chief, then forgets that he ever held public office. He becomes the CEO of the company he works for, then goes back to taking orders from the man he replaced. A person who has lived all of these lives would not be a small-town nuclear plant worker. A person who has won awards, run companies, gone to space, and made millions of dollars would not still be sitting at a low-level desk job in Sector 7G. But Homer is. Every Monday, Homer is. The show resets him over and over because the show needs him there. The show is not really about a man with a rich and varied career. It is about a man at a desk. The career is the joke. The desk is the truth. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But the issue does not end with Homer's working life. The same thing has happened to his marriage. The story of how he and Marge ended up together, of when Marge got pregnant, of when they bought their house, of what their first apartment looked like, has been told over and over in different ways. The dates do not match. The circumstances do not match. The order of events does not match. The next plot hole is the strange tangle of how, exactly, Bart was conceived. Section 7. The 5 different Homer and Marge pregnancy stories. Bart Simpson is the oldest child of Homer and Marge. He is 10 years old. He is the first one. He came into the family before anyone else. The story of how he was conceived, how he was born, where his parents lived at the time, and what their lives looked like in the months before and after his arrival should be the most settled story in the entire show. It is the story of the Simpson family beginning. That story has been told 5 different ways. None of them line up. Each retelling overwrites the last. By the time the show reached its later seasons, the question of when and how Bart Simpson came into the world had no clean answer at all. The first version came in a Season 3 episode called I Married Marge, which aired in December 1991. Homer is sitting in the doctor's office. Marge has gone in for a pregnancy test. While he waits, Homer thinks back to the time when Marge first got pregnant. The flashback drops the audience into 1980. Homer and Marge are young adults. Homer is working at a mini-golf course. Marge has just told him she is pregnant. Homer panics. He proposes to her in the parking lot of the golf course. They drive across the state line to a small wedding chapel and get married, while Marge is already visibly pregnant. Homer takes a job as a door-to-door knife salesman for a company called Slash Co. to support his new family. He fails at the job. He fails at every job he tries. Eventually, he walks into the nuclear power plant and begs Mr. Burns for work. He gets hired. Bart is born later that year. The episode ends with Homer telling baby Bart that he loves him and promising to be a good father. This is the original story. Bart was conceived in 1980. Homer and Marge were both around 23 or 24 years old. They were not married when she got pregnant. They got married at a small chapel because of the pregnancy. Homer got the power plant job because he had a baby on the way and no other options. The whole episode rests on these facts. They are presented as the truth of how the Simpson family began. The second version came 1 year later in a Season 4 episode called Lisa's First Word, which aired in December 1992. The flashback in this episode is set between 1981 and 1984. The Simpsons are now married, with baby Bart living in a small apartment on the Lower East Side of the city. The neighborhood is rough. The apartment is small. Homer is working at the power plant. The episode shows Bart as a baby, then as a toddler, then learning to walk, then learning to speak. Marge eventually announces she is pregnant with Lisa. Homer and Marge decide they need a bigger place. They buy 742 Evergreen Terrace from Homer's father, Abraham, who sells his own house to give them the down payment. The Simpson family moves into the house the audience has known the family to live in for the entire show. Lisa is born in 1984. This second version mostly fits with the first. Bart is born in 1980. The family lives in an apartment for the first few years of his life. They buy the house when Marge gets pregnant with Lisa. The math works. The two episodes can sit next to each other without contradicting one another in any major way. The third version is where things start to fall apart. In a season 6 episode called And Maggie Makes 3, which aired in 1995, Homer tells the story of how he came to have his third child. The flashback shows Homer paying off the mortgage on the house and quitting the power plant. He becomes a worker at a bowling alley, which has been his dream job. He is happy for the first time in his life. Then Marge tells him she is pregnant again. Homer's joy collapses. He cannot afford a third child on a bowling alley salary. He has to crawl back to Mr. Burns and ask for his old job at the power plant. The trouble is the way the flashback shows Homer reacting to Marge's news. The scene shows Homer ripping his hair out in fistfuls. The scene shows him already living in the Evergreen Terrace house. The scene shows him in his current married life, just a few years before the present day of the show. This was all consistent at the time, but it raised a small problem when paired with the earlier episodes. The original Bart pregnancy was supposed to be the moment Homer ripped out his hair from stress. The original Bart pregnancy in I Married Marge does not show this. So the show has now placed two different hair-ripping pregnancy moments in two different episodes, with no way to know which one really happened. The fourth version is the big one, the version that broke the timeline open. In a season 19 episode called That 90s Show, which aired in January 2008, the show told a completely different story about how Homer and Marge ended up together and how Bart came to be. The audience has already met this episode in an earlier section, but the pregnancy details deserve their own look. In That 90s Show, Homer and Marge are not high school sweethearts who got married because of an accidental pregnancy in 1980. They are a young couple living together in an apartment in the early 1990s. They have already graduated high school. They are not married. Marge gets accepted into Springfield University. Homer takes a job at his father's laser tag warehouse to pay for her tuition. While at school, Marge meets a college professor named Stefan August, who flirts with her and tells her Homer is a simple townie who would not appreciate her intellect. Marge breaks up with Homer to date the professor. Homer becomes the lead singer of a grunge rock band called Sadgasm. He becomes briefly famous. His song accidentally inspires the entire grunge music movement. He becomes addicted to what he thinks are drugs, but turn out to be insulin for the diabetes he developed from drinking too many sweet coffee drinks. Marge realizes she made a mistake leaving him. She breaks up with the professor. She rushes to Homer's hospital bedside. They reconcile. They have sex on a mini golf course. The flashback then ends, and the audience is meant to understand that Bart was conceived during that mini golf course encounter. This is a completely different story. In I Married Marge, Bart was conceived around 1980 inside a settled relationship between two recent high school graduates who got married because of the pregnancy. In That 90s Show, Bart was conceived around 1993 or 1994, inside a relationship that had broken up and reformed between two people in their mid-20s who had been through a college affair, a grunge music career, a drug scare, and a mini golf course reunion. The two stories cannot both be true. The locations are different, the dates are different, the relationship status is different. The reasons for the conception are different. The episode itself acknowledges this. Lisa, near the start of the flashback, takes out her calculator. She does the math out loud. She works out that if Bart is 10 and Homer and Marge are in their mid-30s, then Bart must have been born much later than the show has always claimed. The show is showing the audience that it knows this is a contradiction. It is making the contradiction the punchline. The fifth version came in a season 29 episode called 3 Scenes Plus a Tag from a Marriage, which aired in 2018. The episode shows 3 short flashback scenes from different points in Homer and Marge's relationship. One of the scenes reveals that Homer and Marge lived in a different city before they moved to Springfield. The young couple is shown in a small apartment in this other city, planning their future together. This contradicts the earlier episodes that placed their entire courtship and early married life in or around Springfield. It is a small detail, but it adds another layer of disagreement to a backstory that already had no firm ground. Then came the season 37 premiere in 2025 called Thrifty Ways to Thieve Your Mother. This episode pushes the timeline even further forward. Marge is shown to have been a teenager in the late 1990s. The show makes a point of placing her adolescence in that era through clothing, references to teen dramas of the time, and even a 1990s nostalgia convention. So the timeline that placed Bart's conception in the early 1990s in That 90s Show no longer fits either, because Marge would still have been a child during that period. The newest version pushes Bart's conception out into the early 2000s at the earliest. 5 versions. None of them line up. The pregnancy that started the family has happened in 1980, in 1981, in the early 1990s, in 2 different cities, and most recently somewhere after the year 2000. The question of where Marge was when Bart was conceived is also unsettled. In I Married Marge, Bart was conceived in a putt-putt golf course parking lot. In That 90s Show, Bart was conceived on a mini golf course again. The show has been consistent about the mini golf detail across versions. It is one of the few small constants in a story that otherwise keeps changing. But even the mini golf course is hard to pin down, because the location and surrounding events around that course differ from version to version. The trouble extends to Lisa as well. Lisa's first word puts her birth in 1984. Lisa is supposed to be 8 years old, and Bart is supposed to be 10, with a 2-year age gap between them. But in Lisa's Sax, a season 9 episode that aired in 1997, the flashback shows Lisa as a 3-year-old in 1985. If Lisa is 3 in 1985, she was born in 1982, not 1984. This contradicts Lisa's first word, where her birth is shown happening in 1984. The same episode also shows Bart as a 5-year-old in 1985, which would mean he was born in 1980. The dates between Lisa's age and Bart's age in that flashback do not match the dates given in earlier episodes. Maggie's birth is even harder to pin down. The episode And Maggie Makes 3 suggests she was born in or around 1993, which would fit the show's actual airing schedule at the time. Lady Bouvier's Lover, a season 5 episode from 1994, opens with a celebration of Maggie's first birthday party, which would also place her birth in 1993. But under the new timeline established by That 90s Show and Thrifty Ways to Thieve Your Mother, Maggie cannot have been born in 1993, because at that point, Marge had not yet finished high school under the newer version of events. There are also long-running fan questions about whether Bart is really Homer's biological son. In the very first episode of the show, Some Enchanted Evening, a babysitter is heard saying on a radio call-in show that Bart looks nothing like his father. The show has played with this idea over the years in different small ways. Bart has black hair, in a way, while everyone else in the family has yellow hair. The genetics of yellow Simpson skin and Bart's hair color have never been treated as serious topics, but the small running joke about Bart not resembling Homer has shown up several times in throwaway lines. The show has never confirmed or denied the joke. It just lets it sit. And then there is the question of where exactly Homer and Marge lived during Bart's earliest years. In Lisa's first word, the family lived in a Lower East Side apartment in a big city. In I Married Marge, the family lived in a small place in or around Springfield. In that 90s show, the young Homer and Marge lived in an apartment complex called Springfield Place. In 3 scenes plus a tag from a marriage, they lived in a different city entirely. None of these locations agree with one another. The Simpsons could have raised baby Bart in 4 different places, depending on which episode the audience is watching. The cumulative effect of all these retellings is that the family does not really have a beginning. Homer and Marge could be high school sweethearts who married young. They could be a young dating couple who broke up over a college professor. They could be a couple who started off in another city before moving to Springfield. They could be teenagers who met in the late 1990s. The story of how the family came to be is no longer one story. It is a stack of competing stories, each told with full sincerity, each canonical in its own moment, none of them able to coexist with the others. This matters because origin stories matter. The story of how a family began is supposed to be the foundation everything else stands on. The audience is supposed to know how Homer and Marge fell in love, how they decided to get married, how they brought their first child into the world. These are the moments that explain everything that comes after. They are the reasons the family is the way it is. The Simpsons gave up on having a stable foundation. Each new flashback episode resets the ground. Each new generation of writers tells the story their own way. The audience is left with 5 different beginnings for the same family, and no way to choose between them. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But the changing stories of Homer and Marge are not the only thing that floats. The actual house they live in does the same thing. The address shifts. The street number shifts. The layout of the rooms shifts. Even the color of the walls in some places shifts. The most fixed thing in any sitcom, the family home, has been one of the least fixed things in The Simpsons. The next plot hole is the strange and shifting reality of 742 Evergreen Terrace. Section 8. The 742 Evergreen Terrace Address Problem. The Simpson family lives at 742 Evergreen Terrace. Every fan knows this. The address has been printed on countless pieces of merchandise. It has been used in trivia games. It has been carved into the public memory of the show as the family's home base. The pink walls, the orange roof, the small front lawn, the garage on the left side, the mailbox at the end of the path. Every detail is meant to be a fixed thing the audience can return to, week after week, season after season. The house is supposed to be the safest place in the show. It is the one location the family always comes back to. It is where the couch gag happens. It is where the family eats dinner. It is where the children sleep. It is the heart of the entire series. That heart has not been still. The address has changed. The numbers have changed. The layout has changed. The garage has moved. The basement has moved. The colors have changed. The very lot the house sits on has changed. The most fixed point in the show has been one of the least fixed points in the show. Start with the address itself. Most fans will say without hesitation that the family lives at 742 Evergreen Terrace. This is the official address. This is the address that gets used most often. But across the run of the show, the family has been shown to live at a long list of other addresses, all on the same street, all spoken or written on screen by the show itself. The list of confirmed addresses includes 59 Evergreen Terrace, 94 Evergreen Terrace, 430 Evergreen Terrace, 555 Evergreen Terrace, 723 Evergreen Terrace, 1024 Evergreen Terrace, 1092 Evergreen Terrace, 1094 Evergreen Terrace. Each of these has appeared in at least one episode as the canonical address of the Simpson family. In a Season 4 episode called Camp Krusty, which aired in 1992, the address is given as 430 Spalding Way. This is not even on Evergreen Terrace. This is a different street entirely. The first episode of the 4th season opens with the family living at a completely different address, on a street that has never been mentioned again in the show's history. In a Season 4 episode called Homer's Triple Bypass, the show goes even further. 742 Evergreen Terrace is shown to be a different house entirely, not the pink house with the orange roof, a whole other house. The address that has been beaten into the audience's memory now points at a place that does not match what the audience has been seeing for years. There is no in-universe explanation for any of this. The family does not move. They do not sell the house. They do not move into a new place. The address simply changes, and the show carries on as if nothing has happened. The number on the mailbox itself shifts in the opening credits. The animation has been redone several times over the show's long run. The number on the mailbox is meant to be 742. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is just hard to read. Sometimes the camera does not linger long enough for the audience to be sure. The show does not seem to treat this as a thing that needs to be locked down, but the address is only the start of the problem. The real strangeness is what happens once the audience walks through the front door. The interior of the Simpson house has been redrawn so many times that it cannot really be mapped. The most basic layout details change between episodes. The location of rooms shifts. The size of rooms shifts. The relationships between rooms shifts. There is no consistent floor plan that holds across the show. The basement stairs are the clearest example. In some episodes, the basement entrance is in the hallway off the kitchen, near the door that leads to the garage. In other episodes, the basement entrance is in the front foyer of the house, near the main staircase that goes up to the bedrooms. The two locations are on different sides of the house. There is no way both can be correct. But the show has used both in different episodes, with no acknowledgement that the basement has moved. The kitchen archway has changed sizes many times. In some episodes, the opening between the kitchen and the dining room is small. In other episodes, the opening is large enough that the two rooms feel like one space. The wall that contains the archway has shifted in and out. The dining table has been in different positions. The kitchen island has come and gone. The garage has done something even stranger. In a Season 6 episode called Treehouse of Horror 5, in a segment called Time and Punishment, a machine picks up the entire Simpson house to take it to a re-education center. As the house is being lifted, the garage is shown on the wrong side of the building. In every other shot of the house in the series, the garage is on the left side as the audience faces the front. In this scene, it is on the right. After the scene, in shots of Homer returning to the house, the garage is back on the left side. The garage simply slid across the house and slid back. The garage interior has its own continuity problem that runs through the entire opening credits sequence. In the credits, Homer comes home from work. He pulls into the driveway. He gets out of his car. The audience can see, through the open garage door, what is inside the garage. There are boxes. There is a rake. There are various household items. Then Marge arrives in her car. Homer rushes inside the house to get away from her. As he runs through the garage, all of those boxes and that rake suddenly disappear. Two completely different boxes appear out of nowhere in a corner. The interior of the garage rearranges itself in the space of a few seconds, with no one touching it. This was a small animation continuity slip in the original opening credit sequence. The show used it for nearly 20 years, from the start of Season 2 to deep into Season 20. Then the show changed to a high-definition format and redrew the entire opening sequence, which is where the issue eventually got cleaned up. But for almost 2 decades, every single episode of the show began with a moment where the inside of Homer's garage rearranged itself in real time. The bedrooms upstairs have also shifted. The size and shape of Bart's room has changed. The size and shape of Lisa's room has changed. The treehouse in the backyard is sometimes a small box and sometimes a multi-room hideout. The size of the backyard itself has changed, sometimes appearing as a tight square of grass, sometimes appearing as a sprawling open space. The neighborhood layout shifts even more dramatically. In one early episode, Moe's Tavern is shown to be a short walk from the Simpson home. Homer can stumble home from the bar on foot. In other episodes, Moe's Tavern is across town, requiring a car ride that takes real time. The bar cannot be both close and far. The show has placed it in both spots, in different episodes, with no consistency. In one episode, the power plant is shown to have a river running near it. The river is being polluted by the plant's waste. Fish in the river are mutated. This becomes a plot point. The river is never seen again in any later episode. It does not exist in subsequent shots of the area. The geography of the town simply forgets it once the episode is over. The school itself has undergone strange changes. Springfield Elementary is shown in different colors in different episodes. Sometimes the school is yellow. Sometimes the school is white. Sometimes it changes color in the middle of the same episode, depending on the angle of the shot. The show eventually decided to make the school officially yellow. To explain the white version that had appeared in earlier episodes, the writers added a small detail to Principal Skinner's office. They put a framed photograph on the wall behind his desk showing the old, white version of the school. The photograph is meant to canonize the older episodes by saying that, yes, the school used to be white and now it is yellow. The school was repainted at some unspecified point. This is the only attempt the show has ever made to explain a continuity slip about the look of a building. The Quickie Mart has moved around town, the Quick Stop. The brown house across the street where the elderly couple lives. The Flanders house, which is sometimes large and sometimes small. The Springfield retirement castle. All of these locations shift in and out of various neighborhoods depending on the needs of the episode. The interior layout of the Simpsons' living room is the area that holds the most consistency. The orange couch always faces the television. The lamp is always behind the couch. The painting of a sailboat is always above the couch. These are the elements the show has decided to treat as fixed. The couch gag, the moment when the family runs in and arranges themselves on the couch, is one of the show's most recognizable opening sequences. The show needs the couch and the surrounding furniture to be stable so that the gag can be done a different way each week against the same backdrop. So those elements stay put, even as everything around them moves. But step one room over into the kitchen or the dining room or the back porch, and the layout begins to shift again. The doors do not always lead where they used to lead. The windows do not always look out at the same view. The walls themselves seem to be in different places. There is one episode in particular where the show acknowledged its own house-related continuity problems. In a season 13 episode called The Blunder Years, Homer is hypnotized into recovering a memory from his childhood. The memory involves an old quarry near his hometown. The episode is built on the assumption that Homer's childhood took place around a specific area near Springfield. The setup contradicts other episodes that have placed Homer's childhood in different locations, including the farmhouse where his father, Abraham, raised him. The Simpson family farmhouse has its own continuity issues, since it was burned down in one episode and then was apparently rebuilt and lived in again in a later episode. The farmhouse situation is its own small mess. In a season 6 episode called Grandpa vs. Sexual Inadequacy, the family farmhouse is destroyed by fire. Homer and his father set the fire by accident. The house burns to the ground. It is in the middle of nowhere. There are no firefighters nearby. The house should be gone forever. In a season 11 episode called E-I-E-I-Doe, the family travels to the same farmhouse. They live in it. They use it as a working farm. They grow a special kind of tobacco-tomato hybrid called Tomaco. The house is in the same general location. It looks roughly the same as it did before it was destroyed. There is no explanation for how it was rebuilt, or who rebuilt it, or how it ended up looking the way it does. The show simply uses it again and assumes the audience will not notice that the building it just spent an episode destroying is now back. This is the larger pattern. The physical world of the show is treated as a set of suggestions rather than a fixed reality. Locations move, buildings come and go, addresses shift, layouts rearrange themselves. The town is whatever shape the episode needs it to be. The cumulative effect of all this is that the Simpson family does not really live in a real place. They live in a series of approximations. A pink house that is sometimes at one address, sometimes at another. A house with a basement that is sometimes in the front foyer, sometimes off the kitchen. A house with a garage that is sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right. A neighborhood with a tavern that is sometimes nearby, sometimes far away. A school that has been at least 2 different colors. A river that exists in one episode and never again. A farmhouse that has been burned to the ground and is somehow still standing. The audience does not really notice most of this in real time. The show is funny enough and the rhythm is fast enough that most of these slips slide past without comment. The eye accepts what the eye sees. If the basement is over here this week, the audience accepts it. If it was over there last week, the audience does not stop to compare. But the slips add up. Over hundreds of episodes, the small inconsistencies accumulate. The house is no longer a single fixed place. It is a family of related places, all called 742 Evergreen Terrace. None of them quite the same as the others. The family does not really live in one home. They live in many similar homes, switching between them without noticing, in a town that has been through more shape-shifting than any of its residents have. This raises a strange question. If the address keeps changing, and the layout keeps changing, and the neighborhood around it keeps changing, then how is the family even able to keep coming back to the same place? How are they able to live a continuous life in a house that is, in some real sense, a different house every other episode? Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The same question can be asked about their travels. The Simpsons have visited almost every state in America. They have crossed the country many times. They have gone abroad. They have caused enough trouble in enough places to have been formally banned from many of them. There is one specific episode where the show keeps a running count of every state the family has been kicked out of. By the end of that episode, the family is banned from almost every state in America. And then, the very next season, they go on vacation again. The next plot hole is the family's running joke of being banned from almost everywhere they have ever been. Section 9. The Simpsons are banned from almost every state and country. The Simpson family travels constantly. They have been to Australia. They have been to Brazil. They have been to Japan. They have been to England. They have been to Italy. They have been to France. They have been to Africa. They have been to China. They have been to India. They have been to Israel. They have been to almost every state in America at one point or another. They have been to so many places that the writers have built whole episodes around the trips themselves. They have also been kicked out of almost every place they have ever visited. The most famous example of this is a season 11 episode called Kill the Alligator and Run, which aired in April 2000. The episode is one of the most widely disliked episodes in the entire run of the show. Critics have ranked it as one of the worst. Fans on community sites have voted it one of the lowest rated episodes the show ever produced. The producer of the show at the time, Mike Scully, has admitted in interviews that fans hate it. The reasons are layered, but the ending is what concerns this section. The story of the episode is simple. Homer takes a magazine quiz that tells him he has only 3 years left to live. He has a mental breakdown over the news. The family takes him to Florida for a vacation, hoping the change of scene will calm him down. They arrive in the middle of spring break. Homer joins the partying. He rents an airboat. He races through the swamps. He hits and seemingly kills the state's most beloved mascot, an alligator named Captain Jack. The family flees. The local sheriff chases them. They are eventually arrested. They are sentenced to forced labor on a chain gang. While serving their sentence at a party for a judge, Captain Jack the alligator walks out of the state capitol building, alive and well. He had only been knocked out. The Simpson family is acquitted of the charges. The case against them collapses. What happens next is the part that breaks the rules. The judge declares that, despite being acquitted, the Simpson family is now banned from the state of Florida forever. The episode does not stop there. It then shows Marge with a road map of the United States. She has been crossing off with a marker every state the family has been banned from over the course of the show. She crosses off Florida. The audience then sees the map. Almost every state in America has been crossed out. There are only 2 left, Arizona and North Dakota. Homer rejects Arizona because he says it smells funny. The family decides to spend the rest of the trip in North Dakota. This is the moment the show formally states, on screen, that the Simpson family is banned from 48 of the 50 states in America. Hawaii and Alaska are not even mentioned. The 2 states they are still allowed in are tiny windows in a map of forbidden territory. By the rules the show has just laid out, the family cannot legally enter most of the country. The trouble is what happens next. The very thing that would test whether the show meant any of this. The Simpsons keep traveling. In a season 14 episode called Special Edna, which aired in 2003, the family goes back to Florida. They go to attend a Teacher of the Year ceremony for Bart's teacher, Edna Krabappel. Florida is the state they are explicitly banned from. The episode does not mention the ban. The episode does not explain how the family is allowed back into the state. They just go. They walk around. They participate in the awards ceremony. The whole episode happens inside a state where they were forbidden by court order from setting foot. In a season 15 episode called Catch 'Em If You Can, the family takes another trip to Florida. Again, no mention of the ban. Again, no explanation for why they are allowed back. The state apparently forgot. The show certainly forgot. This is just one example. The pattern repeats with other states and other countries. In a season 6 episode called Bart vs. Australia, which aired in 1995, Bart calls Australia from a phone in his bedroom. He runs up an enormous phone bill. The American government pulls him into a meeting and tells him he must apologize to the Australian government in person. The family flies to Australia. The trip ends in disaster. Bart, in front of the Australian Prime Minister, the people of Australia, and the international press, drops his pants and shows his bare bottom to the entire country. Written on it are the words, "Don't tread on me." The family flees the country one step ahead of an angry mob. The implication is clear. They are not welcome back in Australia. Despite this, in later episodes, the show casually mentions Australia as if the trip never had any lasting effect. The country itself is treated as just another place on the map. In a season 13 episode called Blame It on Lisa, the family travels to Brazil. The episode portrays Brazil in a way that caused real-world problems for the show. The Brazilian Tourism Board issued formal complaints. The president of Brazil at the time, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, criticized the episode. The Brazilian government threatened to sue the show for damaging the country's reputation. The show eventually issued an apology. The Simpson family, within the world of the show, leaves Brazil after a series of misadventures. Years later, in a season 25 episode called You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, the family returns to Brazil. There is no mention of any consequence from the previous trip. There is no explanation for why they are welcome back. In a season 14 episode called The Regina Monologues, the family travels to England. They cause a small international incident at the end of the episode involving the Queen and a chase through London. By the standards of how the show usually handles the consequences of its trips, the family should never be allowed back. They are back in England in later episodes. The previous trip is not mentioned. In a season 17 episode called Kiss Kiss Bang Bangalore, Homer is sent to India for work. He thinks he is going to Indiana. The trip causes problems for everyone involved. India, like Australia and Brazil, is treated in later episodes as a place the family can return to whenever the writers want to send them there. No long-term consequence holds. In a season 10 episode called 30 Minutes Over Tokyo, the family travels to Japan. By the end of the episode, they are broke, on a plane home, having lost all their money to a Japanese game show. The trip ends with them barely escaping. The show does not formally ban them from Japan, but the manner of their departure makes another visit unlikely. They have been back to Japan in later episodes anyway. In Africa, in a season 12 episode called Simpsons Safari, the family ends up in the middle of a coup. They flee the country. The show does not return to that specific situation, but it has sent the family to other parts of Africa in later episodes without acknowledging the previous trouble. The pattern is clear. The family causes a major incident. The show implies, sometimes explicitly, that the family will face long-term consequences. The next time the writers want to send the family on vacation, those consequences are simply forgotten. The Florida case is the most flagrant because the show was so specific about it. Marge crossed off the state on a real map, on screen, with a marker in front of the audience. The action could not have been clearer. And yet, 2 seasons later, the family was back in Florida, walking around the same state with no mention of any ban. But the Florida ban raises a much bigger question that the show never addresses. If the family is banned from almost every state in America, then the state they live in must be one of the very few they are still allowed in. By the math of kill the alligator and run, the only places left on the map are Arizona and North Dakota. So Springfield, the town where they live, must be either in Arizona or North Dakota. This contradicts almost every other clue the show has ever given about Springfield's location. Arizona is a desert state. North Dakota is a cold northern plains state. Neither one matches the climate Springfield has been shown to have, which has included snow, beaches, deserts, mountains, forests, oceans, and gorges, sometimes all in the same season. Neither one matches the area code or zip code clues the show has dropped over the years. Neither one matches the geography Ned Flanders described in the Simpsons movie, where Springfield was supposedly bordered by Ohio, Nevada, Maine, and Kentucky. So the family is banned from every state except the 2 states they could possibly live in, and the geography the show has built does not match either of those 2 states. The math collapses in on itself. The map joke is funny in the moment of the episode, but it cannot be reconciled with anything else the show has said about its own world. There is also the question of how Captain Jack, the alligator, ends up walking out of the Capitol building alive at the end of Kill the Alligator and Run. Mike Scully has admitted in interviews that this twist makes no real sense within the episode. There was originally a scene that explained how the alligator got into the building. The alligator was supposed to be lying in state at the Capitol, with mourners paying their respects to him, including Kid Rock. The scene was cut for time. Without it, the alligator simply appears, alive, with no setup. Scully has said he regrets cutting the scene because it leaves a hole in the logic of the episode. The show went ahead and aired the version with the hole. The cut scene matters because it reveals something about how the show treats its own continuity. The writers knew there was a logic problem. The writers had a fix for it. They cut the fix anyway. The show was willing to leave a logic gap in the middle of an episode rather than restructure the runtime around the fix. Once that decision is made at the level of a single episode, the same kind of decision becomes easier to make at the level of an entire show. The show has piled up these traveling-related plot holes in other ways too. The family has appeared in the same season in places that would require huge amounts of travel time without explanation. They have appeared in places that should require passports, while the show makes clear they did not bring any. They have crossed borders into countries that should have refused them entry based on past behavior. In the Simpsons movie, this same problem comes up. The family is fleeing Springfield, which has been sealed inside a giant glass dome by the federal government. They make their way to Alaska. The way they get there involves crossing through Canada at one point. The film never addresses how a family of fugitives on the run from the United States Environmental Protection Agency manages to cross an international border without passports, without being identified, and without being arrested. The film simply has them get to Alaska. The audience is meant to accept it. The same film also features the disappearance of a pig. Earlier in the film, Homer adopts a pig named Plopper. The pig becomes the cause of the entire plot of the movie, since Homer's careless disposal of the pig's waste is what gets the town poisoned. After the family escapes the dome and flees the house, the pig is forgotten. The film never shows what happens to the pig. The pig simply vanishes from the story. The pattern across all of this is the same. The Simpsons treats the consequences of its own stories as optional. A character is banned from a state until that ban becomes inconvenient. A country is angered by the family's behavior until the writers want to send the family back. A pig is the cause of a global crisis until the pig is no longer needed. A border is impossible to cross until the script needs the border to be crossed. The cost of this approach is that the world of the show feels lighter than air. Nothing the family does has weight beyond the episode it happens in. Bart can moon the entire nation of Australia, and Australia will still welcome him back. Homer can kill the official mascot of Florida, and Florida will let him back in. Lisa can humiliate Brazil on the world stage, and Brazil will let the family return for another trip. The places the family visits are not real places. They are temporary backdrops. They have no memory of the family, even when the show explicitly told the audience that they would. This is a different kind of plot hole from the others. It is not about the timeline. It is not about character backstory. It is about the relationship between actions and consequences. In a normal story, what a character does in one chapter affects what is possible in the next chapter. In The Simpsons, what a character does is allowed to evaporate the moment the credits roll. Each episode is its own world. The previous episodes do not bind it. The future episodes do not feel its weight. The show has accepted this as the cost of staying on the air for 36 years. The producer, Matt Selman, has said as much. The show is too long to maintain a true continuity. The canon must be allowed to break itself when the story needs it to. Every episode is its own little reset. But the cost of the reset is real. The family does not really travel through a real world. They travel through a series of postcards that get filed away after each trip. The places they visit do not change them. The people they meet do not stay in their lives. The bands they incur do not bind them. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. This same problem of memory and forgetting shows up in one more place that has not been covered yet. There are characters on the show who used to be major parts of the story, who used to appear in episode after episode, who had relationships and storylines and growth, and who simply vanished. Some of them died, some of them moved away, some of them are still in the background of crowd scenes, unspoken, unacknowledged. Some of them existed long enough to leave behind family members the show kept using even after the original character had disappeared. The next plot hole is the strange and sad story of every character The Simpsons has quietly erased. Section 10. The Disappeared and the Quietly Erased. Lisa Simpson does not really have any close friends. The audience is so used to seeing her alone, sitting on a swing in the playground while other kids ignore her, that the loneliness has become part of her character. She is the smart one. She is the outsider. She is the girl who reads books while the other kids play. This was not always true. In the early seasons of The Simpsons, Lisa had a best friend. Her name was Janie Powell. Janie first appeared in the 6th episode of Season 1. She kept appearing throughout Season 2. The two girls did everything together. They had sleepovers, they played at school, they confided in each other. Janie was a regular part of Lisa's life and a regular part of the show. Then she vanished. The show did not give Janie a send-off. There was no episode where she moved away. There was no episode where the friendship ended. She simply stopped being Lisa's best friend. She stopped getting lines. She slowly drifted into the background of school crowd scenes, where she could still be spotted as a model the animators reused, but where she rarely interacted with Lisa or anyone else with a name. The friendship that had been a steady part of the show's first 2 seasons quietly stopped existing. Years later, in a season 28 Treehouse of Horror segment, the show finally addressed her absence in the cruelest way possible. Janie was killed off, eaten by a runaway lawnmower while playing hide and seek. The death happened in a horror-themed episode, which means it does not really count as canon. The show had simply forgotten her, and when it remembered her, it killed her as a small, dark joke. Janie is one of many. The Simpsons has done this kind of disappearance dozens of times. Characters who once mattered fade away with no explanation. The show has built a long and quiet graveyard of people who were once part of the world and who now exist only as background filler. Bart used to have more friends than just Milhouse. In the early seasons, his close circle included a black classmate named Lewis Clark and a friend named Richard. The two boys appeared regularly. They had distinct personalities. Lewis, in particular, was not a sycophantic follower like Milhouse. He would sometimes tease Bart, sometimes argue with him, sometimes pretend to be a corpse under a pile of leaves to scare him. He was a real friend with real edges. Lewis and Richard slowly stopped getting lines. They stopped being in major scenes. They became background figures in classroom shots. Lewis last had any real moment in a 2010 episode. He has been a silent extra ever since. Richard followed the same path. The early friend group of Bart Simpson has been dismantled, character by character, with no in-universe acknowledgement that any of these boys were ever close to him. The show has forgotten entire family members. Homer has a half-brother named Herb Powell. Herb was voiced by Danny DeVito and appeared in 2 notable episodes. In the first, called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?, Herb is the wealthy head of a car company. He gives Homer a chance to design a car for the average American. Homer's design is so terrible it bankrupts the company. Herb loses everything. He becomes homeless. The episode ends with Herb hating Homer. In the second Herb episode, called Brother, Can You Spare 2 Dimes?, Herb returns. Homer's family lends him money. Herb uses it to invent a baby translator, a device that converts a baby's cries into words. The translator works. Herb becomes rich again. The two brothers reconcile. The episode ends warmly. The baby translator is the part the show forgot. A device that lets parents understand exactly what their babies are trying to say would change human life forever. Every family with an infant would want one. Apu and Manjula, who later have 8 babies at once on the show, would benefit enormously. The Simpson family, who has a baby of their own in Maggie, would benefit. The technology is presented as a real working invention. Then it disappears. It is never mentioned again. The baby translator does not exist in any episode after Herb leaves with it. Herb himself has not appeared in a major role in over 30 years. He had a small voice cameo in a recent episode, but no real return. The show has erased characters whose absence has been forced by real-world tragedy, and it has handled some of those absences better than others. Phil Hartman was a beloved voice actor on The Simpsons. He played 2 of the most popular recurring characters in the show's history. The first was Lionel Hutz, the incompetent and morally questionable lawyer. The second was Troy McClure, the washed-up actor who introduced Springfield to all kinds of terrible educational films and infomercials. Both characters appeared in dozens of episodes across the show's first 9 seasons. Phil Hartman was murdered by his wife in 1998. The Simpsons producers chose to retire both Lionel Hutz and Troy McClure rather than recast them. This was a respectful decision, but the show never gave the audience any in-universe explanation for why these 2 beloved characters simply vanished. They did not move away. They did not die in the world of the show. They were not mentioned in the way Edna Krabappel was mentioned after Marcia Wallace's real death. They were just gone. The audience was left to assume the worst, or to accept that the show would never explain it. Edna Krabappel was treated differently. After Marcia Wallace died in 2013, the show worked Edna's death into the canon. A chalkboard gag at the start of one episode read, "We'll really miss you, Mrs. K." A scene in another episode showed Ned Flanders, who had married Edna in a later season, wearing a black armband and quietly mourning her. Nelson Muntz, one of her former students, told Ned that he missed her too. The show then moved on. Edna's death has stuck. She has not been brought back as a ghost. She has not appeared in flashbacks except sparingly. She is one of the few characters whose absence has been honored without being undone. But for every Edna, there are 5 characters the show could not be bothered to send off properly. Apu Nahasapima is the most striking example. For nearly 30 seasons, Apu was one of the most prominent recurring characters on the show. The owner of the Quickie Mart, Homer's friend, the husband of Manjula, the father of 8 children, the voice behind one of the most quoted catchphrases in the show's history. In 2017, a documentary called The Problem with Apu by comedian Hari Kondabolu raised concerns about the character's portrayal of South Asian people. The show responded with a season 27 episode called Much Apu About Something, which fans and critics found dismissive and inadequate. The voice actor Hank Azaria, who had played Apu since the very first appearance of the character, announced in early 2020 that he would no longer voice the role. Apu's last voice speaking line was in the season 29 premiere, an episode called The Simpsons, which aired in 2017. Since then, Apu has only appeared as a silent background character. The show has not killed him off. The show has not explained where he went. The show has not addressed his disappearance in any meaningful way. He is simply not there anymore, even though the Quickie Mart still exists in the show, even though his family still exists in the show, even though dozens of his children still exist in the show. Then, in October 2025, the show finally addressed Apu's absence in the strangest possible way. In a Treehouse of Horror segment called Plastic World, the show revealed that Apu had died. The reveal happened in a Halloween episode, which means it does not count as canon. So Apu has been killed off in a way that does not count. after years of being absent in a way that was never explained. The list of forgotten characters keeps going. Mrs. Glick, the elderly Springfield resident voiced first by Cloris Leachman and later by Tress MacNeille, was killed off in a season 23 episode called Replaceable You. The show held a funeral for her. Then she kept appearing in later episodes as if she had never died. The writers seem to have forgotten their own decision to kill her. She is sometimes alive, sometimes dead, depending on which episode the audience is watching. Maud Flanders' brother, named Kevin, was mentioned in one episode and never seen again. Marvin Monroe's wife was referenced in early episodes and disappeared. Lunch Lady Doris was retired after the death of her voice actress in 1995, only to return in later seasons after the show recast the role. Dr. Marvin Monroe, as covered earlier, has been alive, dead, alive again, and dead again, with no clear pattern. The pattern that runs through all of this is the same pattern that runs through every other plot hole the show has ever produced. The Simpsons does not really treat its world as a place where things stay where they are. People come and go. Friends fade, family members vanish, beloved characters slip into the background and never come back. The show does not say goodbye to them. The show does not explain their absence. The show simply moves on, and the audience is left to notice the empty chairs. Lisa Simpson sits alone on her swing, not because she has always been alone, but because the show keeps taking her friends away from her. Bart Simpson has only Milhouse, not because he has always had only Milhouse, but because the show whittled his circle down over the years and never replaced what it took. Springfield is a town with a population that has been quietly shrinking, even as new characters keep showing up to take the place of the old. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.